Hi everybody, welcome back to Mando Lessons. This is part 2 in a series on learning to follow guitar players. So in part 1 I talked about just learning simple guitar shapes like G, C, D, A, E, F, a couple different chord shapes. But another thing that guitar players are often liable to use that you don't see as much in the mandolin world is a capo. I've got a couple capos here. They come in various styles, but what a guitar player will do, rather than, maybe they want to play in the key of B flat. Now, B flat chord on a guitar is, at least for me, not being much of a guitar player, I sort of play old time and bluegrass guitar, and a lot of old time and bluegrass guitar players, rather than learning B flat and E flat and F chords, what they end up doing is just using a capo. So they'll take a capo, and you can think, okay, well, how can I get a B flat chord? I know a G chord, and if I take that G and move it up, we have G, and you just move it up one fret towards your right hand, G, A flat, B, just G, A flat, A, B flat, and so you have that G shape up 3 frets, and it sounds awful because you need a capo. So you put a capo on the 3rd fret. We have G, G sharp or A flat, A, B flat, capo right on. Now you play your G chord shape, and your C chord and your D chord, and they come out as B flat, E flat, B flat, and F. So B flat, E flat, F, B flat. And that's a lot easier than learning those chords, which are they're a little more complicated on a 6-string guitar. And the tradition in bluegrass and old time music is to use capos. So as a mandolin player, knowing how a capo is used can be really helpful, so that you know what chords. Because often in bluegrass and old time, mandolin players don't use capos. There's nothing wrong with the capo. I use capos sometimes, and I totally recommend giving it a try if you're interested in that. It's a little less traditional, just because the mandolin fretboard is closer together. There's less stretching to do. A B flat chord on a mandolin isn't quite as involved as it is on a 6-string guitar, at least from my perspective of mostly being a mandolin player and not much of a guitar player, or not much of a guitar player in the sort of styles that would not use a capo. So learning to sort of do a little bit of that kind of music math and say, okay, let's see, they're in G, or they're using G chords, but they're on the 3rd fret. So that must be G, A flat, A, B. You can count on your fingers. G, A flat, A, B flat. Same with C, C, C sharp, D, E flat. And your F chord is actually a D chord, D, E flat, E, F. Now that's kind of an involved process, so if you can get familiar with the Nashville number system, that's going to help you out a lot. And I have a lesson over at mandolessons.com talking about the Nashville number system and how to use it. It's essentially talking about chords as numbers. So you have 4, then a 1, then a 5, and then a 1, then a 4, then a 1, then a 5, then a 1. And if you can get familiar with thinking about 1, 4, and 5 chords on a mandolin, it's going to be easier than doing that calculation of like, 3rd fret, C chord, E flat, 5. It gets really confusing. And often guitar players are going to think, because they're using a G chord shape, it's often guitar players are going to be thinking in 1, 4, and 5 and talking about 1, 4, 5, then then a 1. Because it's easier than saying, okay, well, you play a B flat chord, and then you're at a C chord. Well, that's an E flat, and then you go to a D, but that's actually an F chord. It gets really confusing for the guitar player using the muscle memory of a chord shape that he knows, but trying to say a different chord. It's like seeing the color yellow and trying to say the word red. There's some tests out there that you can do where they show you a color, but you're supposed to say a different color than the color you see, and it's really hard. And it's the same idea with guitar. If you're playing a G chord as a guitar player, then you're sort of thinking that chord, or you're thinking that number. So it's easier to think 1, then a 4, then a 5, then a 1. And so if you can get in your brain the Nashville number system on the mandolin, you're going to do yourself a great service. It's going to be easier to play along with guitar players. And you're just going to have an easier time altogether. So get familiar with how guitar players are using capos. Another example of using a capo on a guitar, if you want to play in the key of E flat, well, you can say, okay, well, I'll take a G chord, G, A flat, A, B flat, B, C, C sharp, D, E flat. I can go all the way up here and capo at the, I don't even know what fret. What would that be? The 8th fret would make an E flat, but that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. It works, but you're cutting off like half of the usable fretboard on a guitar, and that doesn't really make the most sense. You're losing a lot of your bass notes. So you can count up from a different chord. Let's count up from C. So you have C, C sharp, D, E flat. So you've done 3 steps again. 1, 2, 3. Put a capo on the 3rd fret again, just happens to be, and play out of a C chord, and you get an E flat. And you can use all those same chords you've been using in the key of C. So if you're playing with a capo on a mandolin, you can use these ideas that I'm showing you on the guitar. And if you're not using a capo, learning to think in 1, 4, and 5. So you can watch a guitar player and say, okay, that's their 1 chord, there's their 4 chord, and here's their 5 chord. And then thinking in 1, 4, and 5 is going to be easier than sort of calculating those actual chord names and getting your hand into some familiar shapes that work with 1, 4, and 5 on the mandolin. Again, there's a lesson on the Nashville number system over at mandolessons.com, as well as a lot of mandolin lessons that actually involve a mandolin. So if you're looking for more things like that, check out my website, mandolessons.com. It's all free, and I hope you find this sort of stuff helpful, because you're going to run into a lot of guitar players, and learning how to follow a guitar. It takes a little bit of time. If you have a guitar at your disposal, by all means, learn a couple chords and how to use a capo. It'll improve your mandolin playing a lot. But also just sort of knowing visually how a guitar works and what guitar players are doing will help you follow them and sort of join in a band or session environment easier than only knowing how the mandolin works. I hope this is helpful. Again, thanks so much for watching, and hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.